Pop 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 pop. It was only 9:45 p.m. and the local kids were already setting off cherry bombs. Lydia expected such, but even so, it startled her to the point of spilling the tea she held in her hand. The hot liquid burned the inside of her thigh, and she cursed under breath. It was New Year's Eve, and Lydia was spending it the way she always had, alone, curled up with a good book and a hot beverage. The holiday was just another day for her, and although she did make it a tradition to at least stay up until midnight, she felt no need to spend it with friends or family. She liked the solitude, and often felt awkward around other people. Getting up to wash the tea from her leg, she passed the once vibrant Christmas tree whose lights were no longer twinkling. The last time the lights were on was Christmas Day. She made a mental note to take it down the following morning, as well as all the other half-assed decorations she had around her house. She often wondered why she bothered putting them up anyway. Nobody saw them but her, but old habits die hard. Grabbing a rag from a drawer in the kitchen, she wiped off the spilled tea and examined her thigh. The spot was red, but nothing too serious. The pain would subside quickly, and as long as she kept a firm grip on her mug, she was sure she would be able to get through the night without too many serious injuries, fireworks or not. Just then, the phone rang. Forgetting about the burn and figuring one of her family members was calling to wish her a Happy New Year, she answered. "Hello?" She heard laughing in the background, but nobody replied. "Hello?" she asked again, a little louder. "Is Joseph there?" It was a woman's voice. Lydia could still hear laughing in the background. "I'm sorry, there's no Joseph here. You must have the wrong number." Then the person on the other end hung up. Lydia took the phone from her ear and made a flabbergasted facial expression. "That was rude," she said, and placed the phone back on the receiver. As she made her way back into the living room, she heard laughing coming from the front of the house. Immediately reminded of the phone call she just received, Lydia froze to listen. More laughing, and getting louder. She made her way to her front window and peeked outside. To her relief, a group of teenagers were walking up the sidewalk, sparklers in their hands, laughing up a storm. The boys teasing the girls and the girls giggling their heads off. The street lamps made their shadows bouncy and elongated, reminding Lydia of the shadows she used to see when the power would go out and her family had to rely on candlelight. One of the girls pushed one of the boys gently, knocking him off the sidewalk and onto the street. "You're gonna get it now," he shouted, and the girl tried to hide behind one of her friends. Lydia let go of the breath she was holding and closed the curtain. She did not miss being a teenager, although a small part of her felt nostalgic at the thought of interacting with the opposite sex. There was nothing like those first-time butterflies, casual glances, and playful teasing. Smiling to herself, she returned to the couch, sipped her tea and began reading her book again. About an hour passed before the phone rang again. Thinking for sure it would be one of her relatives this time, she got up and answered. "Hello?" Again, nobody answered, but she could hear what seemed to sound like a party in the background. She could hear glasses clinking together, music playing in the distance, loud conversation, and the occasional noisemaker going off. "Hello?" she asked again, louder still. Then she heard what sounded to be someone shuffling the phone about and then nothing. The dial tone was the only thing she could hear now, so she hung up again. "What the hell?" she asked to herself. Aside from the first phone call she received, Lydia figured someone had accidentally butt-dialed her. Letting it go, she returned to the couch. As midnight approached, Lydia grew increasingly tired, but was determined to stay awake. As she read sentence after sentence, her eyelids felt like they were filling with sand, and she would catch herself closing them for a few seconds. She looked at the clock. It was 11:45. 15 more minutes, then I can finally turn in, she said, closing her book and searching for the television remote. Lydia figured the TV would be the perfect distraction as she waited for midnight. Then, the phone rang again. Lydia contemplated answering it. It wasn't usual for her to get any calls period, let alone 3 in a few hours, wrong numbers or not. Curiosity got the best of her, however, and she walked over to the receiver. "Hello?" she asked, in an irritated voice. Honk. A loud noisemaker blasted in Lydia's ear. She moved the phone away from her head as quickly as she would have if she touched a hot stove. A man's voice appeared, and he spoke no louder than an angry whisper. "Happy New Year, Joseph. You never thought I'd do it, but I will." The man laughed, and breathed in deeply. "Do you like when things burn, Joseph? They'll try to stop me, but I'll do it. It will be beautiful." Lydia's brow furrowed. Not knowing how to respond, she said, "Who is this? There is no Joseph here." The man on the other end kept his tone to a whisper and said only one more thing before hanging up. "You'll burn, too." A woman laughed in the background, and then silence. Lydia slammed the phone down into the receiver. A chill ran up her spine and she looked at the clock. It was almost midnight, but she couldn't focus on New Year's when she was shaken to the core. Without really knowing what to do next, Lydia decided to check all the doors to make sure they were locked and all the blinds to make sure they were closed. Her anxiety rose every time a new firecracker went off in the distance, and she kept having to tell herself that it was nothing but kids horsing around and enjoying the holiday. When 11:59 rolled around, Lydia crept back onto the couch and huddled underneath a blanket. She braced herself for the impending firecrackers, and when the clock struck 12 o'clock, she closed her eyes. Several firecrackers and fireworks erupted in the distance, sounding like a mixture of gunfire and explosions. She jumped at every one, holding her breath between every pop and snap, closing her eyes and counting the minutes when it would all be over. The main hoopla subsided around 12:30. Although she was still shaken up from the prank phone call, if that's what it even was, she decided she would turn off her ringer and go to sleep. Her heart had had enough action for the night, and all she wanted to do was close her eyes and drift off into a land of nothingness for a few hours. As her hand went for the ringer off button on her phone, it rang once again. Hesitant to pick it up, yet too curious to leave it ringing, she answered the phone for a fourth time. "Yes?" she asked with a whisper. It was the same man as before, whispering violently. "Are you ready, Joseph? I can feel the heat already. It's moving through my veins and warming the soul that will soon be damned. Oh, Joseph, the time is now." Then what sounded like a loud air horn went off into the phone, and Lydia dropped it to the ground. She could still hear it going off when she picked it up again and slammed it into the receiver. Turning off the ringer, she ran into the back bedroom, shut the door, and jumped onto her bed. She could still hear firecrackers in the distance, but eventually her heart slowed and she was able to lie down. She wasn't able to fall asleep until around 2 a.m., but she did eventually drift off into that land of nothingness. "I'm here, Joseph. It's happening." Lydia's eyes fluttered open to the sound of a man talking and the smell of smoke. Startled awake, she found she was lying on her bathroom floor with the door closed. She was unable to process how she got there because panic took over her body. "It's going to be so beautiful, and you won't be able to stop me." A woman giggled, and then Lydia heard what sounded like scratching on the door. She suddenly felt like she was being pressed to death, unable to get up or do anything because the fear she felt was so strong. After a few seconds, she recognized the voices as the ones she heard on the phone earlier. Lydia heard a loud bang as if something large had been dropped outside the door, and she jumped, tears beginning to stream down her face. Too scared to do anything, she put her hands to her mouth and waited to see if anything else would happen, all the while, the smell of smoke getting stronger. Lydia felt her stomach drop. More scratching up and down her door, and then the man whispering again. "It's gonna burn. It's gonna burn." Whoever was on the other side of the door suddenly ran out of the room, so Lydia jumped up and tried the door. Jammed. Something was blocking it from the outside, just as she expected. Lydia pressed her ear against the door and listened. From the distance, she heard the man and woman laughing. "It's getting hot. The flames are spreading," the man screamed. Putting two and two together, Lydia figured the people in her home were going to burn the house down, with her in it. Looking up at the only other way out, her heart sank. There was no way she would be able to fit through the tiny bathroom window. "Let me out!" Lydia screamed, hoping against hope someone would open the door. The only response she heard was more laughter. In the distance, she heard glass break. Lydia tried the knob again, and found that it was becoming warm. "Whoever you are, please let me out. I'll give you anything you want, just please let me out of here." Silence. She pressed her face against the door and felt a slight heat. She turned and faced the mirror, almost not recognizing herself because the terror in her face made her look completely different. "I'm going to die," she thought. What a great way to start off the new year. Lydia leaped to her feet and grabbed the toilet tank lid. Without thinking of anything else, she started hitting it against the doorknob, hoping she could somehow break the door open. Smoke started coming through under the door, and Lydia started pounding faster. With every hit, Lydia let out a desperate cry. After a few minutes, Lydia thought she wasn't going to be able to do it, but with one final smack, the doorknob fell to the ground. Lydia pushed the door with all her strength, but it was futile. Whatever those people pushed in front of the door, it was not going anywhere. In a fit of rage, Lydia slammed the palms of both her hands into the door over and over, screaming until she started coughing. The smoke and heat coming into the bathroom was beginning to become too much. With resignation, Lydia sank to the floor. Her eyes began to sting and it was getting too hard to breathe. She was becoming lightheaded. She looked over to the small bathroom window and thought I could have at least opened it and screamed for help. She closed her eyes, heat enveloping her body. Her final thought before passing out was, "Who the fuck is Joseph? I hope he had a better New Year's Eve than I did." It took 8 minutes for the fire department to respond, but by then it was too late. Credit to Aya, and it was too late. Credit to Aya, and it was. The first thing I remember of my arrival in Atneo, the small Native American village in the northern reaches of Minnesota, was the smell. The familiar aroma of soaked dirt permeated the air and was instantly noticeable as soon as the doors of the cramped, 12-seater plane were opened. The runway that we landed on almost looked like it could have been constructed a month ago. Not at all because it looked new, but because it looked so basic. Like it was built for my arrival only. The dirt runway stretched about 950 meters and was accompanied only by a small, one-story concrete building. I had come to this godforsaken no-man's land in order to do research for a book. I was an aspiring author and planned on writing a fictional story set in the wild and needed inspiration. I was also interested in the local legends of the area and the mysterious deaths that were rumored to have taken place near the town. I was not excited about camping in the coldest regions of the country and being torn from my luxuries for 2 months, but I did it in the name of gathering useful information and becoming inspired. What I experienced though, is something I can barely bring myself to recollect. A thick pine forest surrounded the runway entirely, with only one solitary trail leading to the main village. I could see patches of unmelted snow that punctuated the landscape and gave the entire area perpetual moisture. I was still taking in the surroundings when my bags were stripped from my hands and loaded into a pickup truck by a thick, robust man who looked to be about 6 feet 6 inches. Just as my mouth opened to object, a much smaller man stepped out from the truck and came to meet me. "Patrick McLaren?" he said curtly. "Why yes." I was too startled by the bear of a man who had loaded my bags to give an articulate response. "Afternoon, I'll be helping you settle in. As soon as your possessions are taken care of we'll take a drive to the town." The bear never said a word and effortlessly tossed the rest of my luggage, which I had considered quite heavy, into the bed of the pickup. The shorter man motioned for me to get into the passenger seat of the truck and shut the door. The bear hopped into the bed of the pickup and I swear to God the entire vehicle lurched like a boulder had been dropped in. The shorter man hopped into the driver's side, and before I had time to say anything, hit the gas like he had no time to waste. "Now that we're off, I suppose we have time to give you the details. My name is Adrian. I'll be showing you around and getting you settled in your new lodgings. I continued scanning the forests. I could just barely make out small clearings that were spaced out every couple hundred yards. "Alright," I responded. "Hey, how did you know my eye stopped?" Something had just briefly flashed through my peripheral vision. As I turned to look, I was greeted with the same comforting but somehow menacing lines. "Your name? Easy. You're the only one who's come here in weeks. We don't get many tourists around these parts." There was only one name on the ledger and only one man on the plane. I put two and two together. This left me unsettled, but it made sense. The town is secluded, and had little to offer a normal person. We soon arrived at Etnowio and I was checked into the inn. My room was a loft on the second floor and every item in it seemed to be cloaked in a thin layer of dust. Oh well, I thought, I'll only be staying here for one night. I was brought down to the lobby to meet my guide. The man I'd be sharing a tent with for a month. "Patrick," the short man said, "this is Abraham. He'll be your guide in the wilderness and he'll give you an insight to the more in-depth aspects of our culture." I extended a hand, which he firmly shook. "Nice to meet you," Abraham said with a nearly expressionless face. "Well then. Now that the introductions are over, I'd say you both better get a good night's sleep. You'll need it." The frigid morning air chilled me to the core. Even under 3 layers I was shivering and could barely feel my nose. Abe and I set out on a small trail and walked for about an hour before we got to our campsite. Something wasn't right. My guide seemed tense. Overly so. Constantly whipping his head to face something that I never could see, never letting his guard down. Our campsite was in the middle of a large clearing next to a half-frozen lake. I didn't like being in the dead center of the meadow, it made me feel so vulnerable. After the tent was pitched I went on a short walk around the vicinity. I couldn't shake this feeling of being followed. This eerie veil hung over the very atmosphere of the place. Every time I was sure something would be behind me I would turn to find absolutely nothing. Yet every time I tried focusing on the beautiful scenery, the more haunting it became. By nightfall I was already regretting this trip. In addition to the lingering paranoia, winds had picked up. Not strong, but just enough to make the hairs on the back of your neck stand upright. We made a fire and cooked some beans in a pot, but whenever I finally felt relaxed, I'd see something that would make my blood run cold. A figure just barely visible darting into the forest, a twig snapping a few yards behind me. Just something that would put me on edge again. Abe and I climbed back into the tent and bundled ourselves into sleeping bags. It felt good to be out of the open, but the sobering reality that the only thing separating me from the outside was a thin piece of fabric settled in as well. I fell asleep surprisingly soon but was woken up by the wind. It was no longer an eerie breeze, but a vehement, blustering storm. The tent was flapping and shaking wildly, and I could hear the trees and grass swaying and rustling violently. I tried to ignore it and buried myself in my sleeping bag, but several minutes later, I heard something that guaranteed me no sleep for the rest of the night. I could hear the wind calling something. The only way I recognized this was because the wind had a pattern. The whistling repeated in a way that was unmistakably a voice. After listening for several minutes I could make out what it was calling. Defago. I had no idea what it meant, but it sounded like a name. Defago. I could barely contain myself. I rolled onto my other side to face Abe. "Do you fucking hear that?" When I looked over at him, he was huddled in the corner of the tent, shaking, with his head buried in his knees. "Abraham, what the hell is this?" He didn't look up. "Hey, you alright? What the fuck is going on?" Still nothing. I moved toward him and touched his shoulder, which caused him to snap his head up at me, with a look of the most genuine terror I have ever seen. "We have to go now. Now. Have to go. We have to go now." He stammered. "It's not safe, we have to go." As he said this he began to get up and move toward the tent flap. "Stop, no. We are not going out there. I don't know what the hell is happening but going out there is the last thing I am doing." He was not fazed by this whatsoever and continued crawling over me. As he reached for the zipper, I grabbed his arm. "Abe. You cannot leave me out here." He continued to wrestle with the zipper and I grabbed his other shoulder and tried to keep him settled. He grew even more frantic and delivered a strong kick to my chest. I let go of him and fell back down to the tent floor. He opened the tent flap and ran off into the night. "Are you insane? You can't leave me out here," I screamed out at him. I quickly lost sight of him. When I looked out into the night, I was stunned by what I saw. The air was still. The trees and grass were motionless. "This is impossible," I thought. Seconds ago the entire tent was being ravaged by a windstorm. Even worse, the wind became silent. I heard screaming, and identified it as Abe. He drew off into the distance and became inaudible. I wanted to cry. I zipped the tent flap up faster than I had ever done anything in my life and huddled in the corner, listening to the intense silence that hung over the outside. I awoke surprised. Not startled by anything, but surprised. Surprised that I somehow fell asleep, even while gripped by the most intense fear I have ever felt in my life. After making sure that there was nothing outside waiting for me, I gathered my courage and stepped outside. The morning air was crisp and as freezing as ever. My mission was to make it back to Etneo. I didn't bother getting the tent. I simply did not care. All I grabbed was my knife, a jacket, and a few granola bars before heading out. I noticed that, in the patches of snow, there were footprints. At first resembling human footsteps, but then becoming distorted. They became longer, more stretched out. After a while I was sure that they were not footprints coming from a human, not even an animal. The longest set of these prints I saw was roughly 5 feet. In fact, my own imagination couldn't create a monster with feet of this caliber. Then it dawned on me. They weren't footprints. I mean they were at first. I could see the pattern of the bottom of Abe's boots imprinted in the snow. But the long ones? Absolutely not. No, they were drag marks. The long tracks in the snow were evidence of Abraham's futile resistance of being pulled and dragged by something. "Oh my God," I whispered to myself. I sprinted out of the meadow with a pace that would rival Olympic. I turned what was once an hour-long hike into a 35-minute dash. I wanted to throw my guts up by the time I reached the village. I was greeted by several caring townspeople and was escorted to the local tavern for some hot food and a drink. An older native of the town sat down with me and listened to my account of the events. I swear to God, my life, and every dead ancestor I have ever had, that what I am saying is true. I expected skepticism, but received genuine concern from the man. I think this may have troubled me even more. "I see," he responded. The name. What was the name being called? I tried to recollect what I had heard. "I don't know. Defe something? Defago. Defago. That's it." The look on the man's face told a story on its own. "Why? Does that mean something? Is it important at all?" The man remained silent for a few seconds before responding. Defago. Was a prominent hunter. He lived many years ago. Before I was born. One night, he never returned. The same night, a horrible storm came over the entire region. He quickly ended the sentence and looked down at the table, looking as though he had made a mistake. I was frustrated at this horribly vague and seemingly useless information. I could tell he was holding something back. Something important. And? What happened? How is that important? What the hell does this all mean? I responded rather aggressively. The old man sat still as a statue for what seemed like ages, but finally whispered the Wendigo. Every head in the tavern simultaneously turned and glared at the back of the man's head. And then turned to me. "What the hell is the Wendigo?" The tavern patrons continued glaring at the both of us with a twisted look of suspicion and fear. Even the bear looked worried. Reluctantly, the old man responded, "It is something we try to escape." My look of confusion at his answer must have spurred him into elaborating. The legend holds that it survives on the flesh of humans. It may have even been human once before, but no longer. It is a vile creature that stands taller than any man and can strip the flesh from bones. It grows stronger with the very acknowledgement of its existence. and seems to have returned from whatever darkness it has hidden in for so long. He paused. Before, the Wendigo only took several people a year. We simply accepted it as life. The man turned to face the rest of the tavern-goers. Over time, the town vowed to adopt the silence, never to speak of or even acknowledge the Wendigo, and soon, miraculously, the abductions waned. I looked up for my food, trying to process what I was hearing in Defago. The man nodded. Defago was the one man who attempted to conquer the Wendigo. Like I said, he never returned. But there was one more thing. One thing that didn't add up. Abraham. Why was he so disturbed? Why was he driven insane by the wind, and why did he frantically dart into the night like a madman? What did Abraham have to do with any of this? A somber look came over the man's face. It's time for you to go home. Adrian can arrange for your flight to be rescheduled for tomorrow morning. I got up to leave, and as I walked through the door, the bar patrons never shifted their gaze from me. I wanted answers, but I was exhausted and already overwhelmed by this impossible information. After weighing my options, I decided that I had to spend another night out in the woods. To this day I have no idea what came over me. I can't imagine what could have motivated me to spend a night in the belly of the beast, that not 12 hours before, had abducted and most likely killed an innocent man. Whether it was the goal of being able to write about my experiences, a need for closure, or pure delirium, something made me go back out there. My walk through the woods was even worse, because this time I was alone. I didn't even try to convince someone to go with me. Something told me that I had doomed the entire town just by raising this monster from the dead. Breaking the silence. The ever-present voyeuristic and dreadful paranoia was now piled on with a load of guilt. I finally made it to my camping grounds and noticed that not much had changed. The looming trees remained standing and the sickening drag marks on the snow still sat on the ground. I couldn't take it. I kicked the snow over to erase the marks and footprints. I followed the tracks, continuing to erase them, to the tree line, the edge of the meadow. I could see the kicked-up dust and dirt in the woods. But there was something else. A massive wound on a tree. Like someone had taken a jackhammer through it. And on another one just a few feet further, looked like a massive claw mark. Almost like when a wolf marks their territory. But this looked as if something had just scraped it while walking through the forest. I felt sick. I went back to my tent and waited for nightfall. The wind picked up again. Not nearly as bad, but still enough to shake the tent. I knew it was time. I stood up and got out of the tent. The night was illuminated by a soft but passing moonlight, as the clouds repeatedly obscured it from view. This time, the wind had a physical effect. I could see the trees swaying softly and the grass pressed over in one direction. I couldn't tell if this was comforting or not. I switched on my flashlight and scanned the perimeter. Nothing. After standing in the wind for a while longer, I decided to go back in my tent and wait some more. I turned on my heel and nearly fainted at what I saw. There it was, standing directly behind the tent. It towered at least a foot taller than me, and looked straight down with eyes like a hawk. Its head resembled that of a human, but had teeth like a canine. In place of a nose, there was a short, bulldog-like snout, and long, wispy, facial hair sat on its face. I could see pointy ears poking through the long, grayish-black mane that ended just before its waist, with locks of hair hanging over its shoulders. But its arms. Oh God, its arms. They were incredibly long, with its fingers ending below its knees. Its fingernails looked as though they could carve through steel. The body was lean and sinewy, with a pale gray complexion hidden under a very thin layer of hair and fur. The lower body looked as though it was covered by torn cloth wrapped around the waist, and I could see a fragment of the leather jacket worn by my former guide. I knew what it was. There was no mistaking it. It was what I was told of, warned of. It was the Wendigo. My voice was lost. I could barely breathe, let alone form a coherent thought. I didn't know what to do. I took half a step back, but before my foot even touched the ground, it suddenly crouched and leaped over the tent on all fours, knocking into me and ripping through my side with its massive talons. I scrambled to get away and began to frantically crawl towards the tree line. Violently snarling, it grabbed my leg and pulled me back at least 5 feet. My God, its strength was incredible. I was nearly lifted off the ground by the force. I rolled onto my back and met its gaze yet again. I could see its hot breath steaming out of its nose in the cold night air. It let out a blood-curdling screech and pounced for me. I rolled, with great pain, several feet away, narrowly missing the creature's fatal strike. On its fours, it turned to face me again. I pulled out my knife, faced it upwards, and closed my eyes. This was it. I would die, but at least get one good shot in. It leaped for me, but was impeded by the blade. I heard the knife stick into the right side of its chest, causing the monster to release a foul screech a mere foot from my ears. Its breath stunk of rotting flesh and stale blood and nearly made me vomit. My ears rang, but I somehow got to my feet and began a desperate, adrenaline-fueled sprint to the tree line. As my hearing returned, I listened to the monster snarling with anger behind me. I hoped against hope that it hadn't begun to chase after me. If it did, I was done for. I made it to the edge of the forest and dodged several of the massive pines, while continuing to hold my bleeding abdomen. I could make out the trail in the dim moonlight and summed up all the strength I had to make it there. I never slowed my pace, for fear that if I let up for even a second, I'd be back in the arms of the beast. I ran out onto the trail and was instantly assaulted by a blinding light and a force that felt as if an elephant had rammed into me. Before I knew it, I was flying, and landed with a thud onto the dirt road. I opened my eyes and saw 3 figures. 2 of them were natives of Etnuo, stepping out the truck they had just hit me with. The other was the Wendigo. It was standing silhouetted against the moon at the edge of the dirt path opposite of me. It ripped the knife out from its chest and dropped it on the ground with almost an air of arrogance. I tried to get to my feet but felt fiery, staggering pain in my left leg. One of the men helped me get to my feet and practically dragged me to the vehicle and tossed me into the truck bed like I was a sack of potatoes. The force of landing on my broken leg brought tears to my eyes, but I was just too relieved to care. The man who brought me to the truck was the bear. I didn't have to see his face to know who that body and personality belonged to. The other man stood in terror in front of the monster, raising a pistol before him. Before he could pull the trigger, the Wendigo grabbed the man's leg and dragged him off into the woods. I could hear screaming, and the sound of boots scraping against turf and snow. I don't remember what happened after that. I woke up in a hospital in Minneapolis, where a pretty nurse told me in a comforting voice that I was brought here by helicopter after a man found me on a trail. Apparently I was attacked by a bear on a rock climbing expedition. I knew it was completely untrue, but I just nodded my head and on the pillow. Now I'm here, many years later, with a family of my own. I realized I could never publish what I saw in a book. If it really does grow strong with belief of its existence, I just couldn't. Who knows what I've doomed Etnuo to after going hunting for this thing? Generations of torment from the Wendigo? I don't know. Writing this here, putting it on this site gives me closure in a way. Just letting it out and being able to tell my story helps. At least here no one will take it seriously. I learned just a few years ago, after researching the small town, that Defago, the hunter, was Abraham's great-grandfather, and that Abraham's own daughter was taken by the Wendigo 10 years before I arrived in the town. I felt bad that he died in the way he did, but maybe now he's with her somewhere. I like to think that some people can move on from traumatic events. I guess in a way I have. I still get paranoid when the wind picks up. I can't stand going on camping trips, and to this day, on some nights, I swear I can still hear the wind calling my name. Author's note: this story was inspired by Native American folklore and a classic short tale written in 1981 by Alvin Schwartz included in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I hope my reboot of the classic story was worthy and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you. Story was worthy and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you. Story was worthy and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you. Story. Ever since I was a child, I always had a crippling fear of doctors. You may wonder why. These individuals were here only to heal us, mend us. ignoring slight hiccups in medical practice. Everything they did was beneficial. And yet, I could not even be in the same room as one without shivering, without the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. Maybe it's because I'm squeamish, I would tell myself. Perhaps it was because my young mind linked pain and illness to them. It would make sense to a child, since you go to the doctors when you aren't feeling well. Maybe they were the ones that caused it. Of course, this didn't help my fear at all. It probably served to perpetuate it further. But it gave me a small comfort that there was a reason, a rational explanation for having such an irrational fear. But, in reality, it was because of the nightmares. From the age of 8 I suffered horrific dreams, all of which were based in a specific hospital. Unlike your usual sterile building, where smiling nurses would escort patients suffering from all kinds of ailments to the correct rooms to be treated, it was disgusting. The place seemed abandoned, the walls stained with dark brown over the peeling, sun-bleached walls that have turned to a sickly ivory color. The ceiling tiles were damaged, exposing the pipes and cables above. Some snaked down, broken and sparking, only to add to the decrepit nature of the place. The furniture was torn and scattered across the floor, if present at all. All of the halls and rooms were poorly lit, as if the backup power was being used to keep the place lit. What made the dream even more unnerving was that the hospital seemed familiar. As if I had been there before, and that it wasn't just some place in my head. The second floor of the hospital, and some elements of the main entrance and stairwells, bore an uncanny resemblance to a hospital I went to when I was younger for a checkup. It would make sense that this would be the case. Dreams are based very loosely off of what has happened to you, and then are distorted as your brain sifts through the information. But, it wasn't the hospital that frightened me. It wasn't the walls or the ceilings that caused me to wake in fits of shivering and screams. It was what was in the dream with me that frightened me the most. The creature was tall, gangly, and seemed to have an aura of filth surrounding him. He wore a long, stained coat, similar if not identical to those worn by a doctor. It was closed mostly, but underneath he wore a brown waistcoat, made of leather, and long black trousers, with pointed black shoes, much like that of a suit. His hands were covered in large black rubber gloves. His right glove had syringes strapped to the tops of his fingers, with long, cruel spikes where different hues of green and brown liquid dripped. They were linked to canisters on his back, long sections of translucent tubing connecting them to his fingers. But his face, or lack thereof, was the most terrifying. He wore a mask, made of browning leather, with 2 large metal rings and thick, green lenses where the eyes would be. Instead of a nose, a long beak protruded from the mask, with a barbed end. The mask covered his face entirely, strapped onto his head. The rest of his head was covered with a black veil, over which the straps were tied, and a small tricorn hat, made of the same material as his trousers, also black. He would stalk me through my dreams, slowly pacing his way towards me, a distorted chuckle seeping from his mask. I could run as fast as I wanted, I could even try to get out of the hospital. But the doors were always locked, and he would always find me. No matter where I hid, no matter where I ran, he would catch me in his left hand. He would hold me up to his lenses, and would seem to inspect me. He would then run his beak over me, before cackling and spearing me with his syringe glove, injecting me with poison and plague. I could feel myself rotting from the inside out, foaming at the mouth. And then I would scream. And then I would wake up. For years, he tormented me. I couldn't sleep without him tainting my dreams. I couldn't daydream without him haunting my thoughts. It got to the point where my parents were even worried about me. I would be sent to psychiatrist after psychiatrist, and each time they would just prescribe the same old pills. Antidepressants and sleeping pills were the most common, and all they did were make me think about him even more. I decided to name him when I was 10, after doing a project about the Black Death. I ended up settling with the plague doctor. His mask resembled it of those old healers, and much like them he wasn't a doctor at all. He was a quack, he never helped anyone, he only aided the spread of disease and was a harbinger of despair. As the years passed, My terrors slowly subsided, getting gradually less and less intense. Though he never left me completely, less of my dreams would be centered around the hospital. Some nights I could even get a decent rest, without being interrupted by his presence. He never truly left me, but I could finally go to sleep and not have to worry about being trapped in that building anymore. You may be wondering why I'm telling you this now. Why am I telling you about this night terror, about the phantasm that has caused me so much pain? Why am I telling you if I seem to have gotten over it so well, to the point that he no longer haunts my thoughts? The answer is simple, really, I saw him in real life. But he wasn't wearing his long coat, or his cruel glove, or his concealing mask. Now he wore a suit, a ring, and an aged grin. He wasn't tall and thin anymore. He had become shorter and stouter and older. When I first walked in here, it was for a routine checkup. Don't you remember? When I came into the practice, and I locked my gaze with yours. I could see something staring in your eyes, and then you cracked the slightest of grins. And then I realized why you smiled, and it made me scream. I had seen you before. I had seen you when I was a child. Much like now. I was just going in for a routine checkup, that was all. I was just there to have a few injections. Back then, I didn't really have an issue with doctors, only needles. And I was confident in myself. I told my dad that I could do this on my own. So he dropped me off at the hospital, and said he would meet me at the diner across the street whilst he did some shopping. I went through the main entrance, climbed the stairs and made my way to your room at the end of the hall. When I sat down, you asked where my parents were, do you remember? I saw no reason to lie, you were a doctor after all. A good man. So I told you that they weren't here, that I was doing this all by myself. And you nodded, and went to lock the door. And then you grinned at me, like you did when I came for my checkup. And then you injected me. You tied me down and filled me with your poison. I was sick after what you did to me. And then, after you had cleaned me up, and yourself, that if I ever told my parents or anyone about what happened to me here, you would kill my dad. And then you chuckled and sent me on my way. You aren't a doctor. You're a quack, a fake. You didn't help me. You destroyed me. I was sent out of that room a different child. And within me the seeds of my nightmares germinated, and so it blossomed. The plague doctor is your avatar, an image my mind came up with when to shield me from things I could not understand. It was the horrible monster that would capture me, laugh at me, inject me, poison me. You took my life that day, and created an abomination. Well, it seems both of us have limited time now. I can hear the sirens outside just as well as you. I guess you take the law more seriously now you're nearly retired. But that won't change what I'm about to do. Now I'm going to slay this beast. I'm going to kill the plague doctor, once and for all. And maybe then, I can get a good night's sleep. Credit to Crustacean 174, credit to. I'm looking at myself in the mirror, not really realizing how bad I look. My skin looks extremely pale and I got dark bags under my eyes. What on earth happened to me? I've been leaning forward, clenching my hands around the sink. I don't really know how long I've been standing here. I don't even know where I am exactly. My mind has been empty for days. Well, I'm in a hotel, that much I know. But I have no clue of why I went here. Why did I leave home? I look away from the mirror, down into the sink. There's a distinctive smell of metal in the small bathroom area. It looks like the sink hasn't been cleaned in a while, on account of the dust that's in it. I open the tap to wash away some of it. The water starts running slowly, it makes a nice relaxing sound. I close my eyes and listen to the flow of the water. My hands. They were red. I open my eyes again and turn my gaze towards my hands. Strange. What is that? Blood? How did I get blood on my hands? At least that explains the smell. I put my hands under the water flow and start scrubbing. I turn off the water tap and leave the bathroom area. My hotel room isn't a luxury suite. As a matter of fact, it's far from luxurious. The walls are cracked, the paint is peeling off and there's mold in the corners of the room. I sit on the bed that hasn't been made and bury my face in my hands. What has a man done to end up in a shithole like this, I wonder. I can hear voices. No, not in a crazy way of course. The walls aren't very thick, so it's very likely that I can hear the neighboring guests of the hotel. I try to hear what they're saying. Are you listening to me? What do you think? Not responding. Why not? It's just not working. Not even there. The voices sound muffled. It sounds like an argument. I assume they aren't satisfied with this hotel. I can't blame them. But it doesn't matter anyway. I get up from the bed and walk to the wall to shout that they need to quiet down. I listen a little while longer, but the voices have faded. Good. I think I'll go to bed, get some sleep, and tomorrow I'll try to freshen up my memory. 2. The droning sound of a buzzing phone. It's one of the worst sounds to wake up to. I put my phone on the nightstand next to my bed when I enter the room. I slowly open up my eyes and grab the phone. I pick up and listen to the voice on the other side of the line. Hello? I say with a broken voice. I keep listening, but nobody is responding. I wait and listen for a minute. I look at the screen and only realize now that it was the alarm clock on my phone that caused the buzzing. An alarm clock at 3 a.m., what was I thinking? I throw the phone across the room, turn around and try to go back to sleep. I've been tossing and turning for about an hour. Damn it. I can't sleep anymore. I get up and sit on the side of my bed. I guess that's the end of my night. I'll go outside for a nightly walk then. I get dressed, take my key with me and go outside, locking the door behind me. The hallway on the 4th floor is long and dark, there are only a few TL lights illuminating it. At one side is the elevator. The other side turns around a corner towards a flight of stairs. I put my hands inside my pockets and start walking towards the stairs. While I'm walking through the hallway, I take a look at other doors. Most of them have a "Don't Disturb" card hanging on the door handle with the guest's name on it. Don't go there. I immediately stop walking just before I turn around the corner. I look behind me to see who shouted at me. It was a woman's voice. But there's nobody in the hallway. Hello? Who's there? No response. I start walking back in the direction of my room to see if there's someone hiding in the elevator. I click the button as I arrive and the elevator doors slowly open. I take a peek inside and see that there's nobody inside. Relieved, I get in the small area and proceed to the ground floor. You'll be here for a while. There's that voice again. I look around panicky to see where it came from, but I can't see anyone in the elevator with me. Am I going crazy? With a shot, the elevator comes to a stop at the 2nd floor. I'm pressed against the walls, scared to move. The doors slowly open and I'm able to look into the hallway. But once again, the hall is empty. The door is closed again and the elevator starts moving. I assure myself that nobody is following me. I probably imagined the voice. It's about 4 a.m. right now, so it would be very unlikely that there's someone still awake, watching me. I calm myself and as soon as the elevator stops at the bottom floor, I quickly get out. Finally I see a familiar face. I greet the receptionist as I walk by and he gives me a slight smile, suppressing a surprised look because of my appearance at this time of night. Just going out for a nightly walk, I tell him. No you're not, he mumbles. 3. I look at him surprised, but I keep walking towards the entrance. The hotel has 2 doors, as most hotels do. There's a revolving door and a regular one next to it. I'll just take the revolving door then. As soon as I get close to the door, a sensor picks up my movement and the doors start moving. I get into the first of 4 openings, which quickly closes behind me. Then it stops moving. Great. I push against the window of the door to get it moving again, but I can't get it to budge. I call out to the receptionist, but he doesn't notice or hear me. I knock on the window and wave to get his attention but he walks away without even looking into my direction. I'll just hit the door a bit harder then. I kick against the window, I start hitting the glass, but it doesn't even move in the slightest, nor does it damage. Sigh. I'll just wait for help to arrive then. Surely in the morning somebody will come. Daylight's only a few hours away anyway. I get the idea of using my phone to call to the hotel desk, but then I remember I threw it away in my room. I sit down against the glass outer wall, looking at the 3 other parts of the revolving door. I close my eyes for a little while to make time pass faster. This'll give me time to think about why I went here. It feels like hours passed. I have no idea what time it is. Outside it's still pitch black, there's no trace of daylight to be found, but how is that possible? I've been here longer than 3 hours, I'm sure of it. I get up to look inside, to see if the receptionist is back already. But he isn't. I try to push the door again. But it still isn't moving. I put my forehead against the glass and stand there for a little while, when all of a sudden I hear someone breathing softly behind me. I turn around and look straight into a pair of woman's eyes in the left part of the revolving door. She has her hands pressed against the glass, her eyes are large, almost popping out of her head. Locks of her uncombed greasy blonde hair stand up, her lips are chapped and she's even more pale than I am. Her lips are shivering and it seems like she's trying to say something. The dimmed light from the background gives her appearance a strange glow. Hesitantly, I get the courage to speak. "Excuse me, miss. I'm stuck in here. Could you please help me?" Though not surprising, she just keeps staring at me, not responding. Slowly she takes her hands off the glass and points down. She doesn't take her eyes off me. I turn my head slightly to see what she's pointing at, but I don't want to turn around entirely. From the corner of my eye I can see a familiar object on the ground. My phone. Cool. I bend over to pick it up and look at it. How did that get here? I look up to ask her, but she's gone. What the hell was that all about? I look down to my phone and I can see that it's fully charged. Quickly, I dial the number of the hotel desk and wait for someone to pick up. Meanwhile, I see the receptionist returning to the desk and pick up the phone. Finally, I tell him while taking a glance at the parking lot in front of the hotel. "Listen, I know this sounds odd, but I'm stuck here at the entrance. Could you help me out please?" I wait for his response, but I don't hear anything. I turn around to look at the desk to signal the man. My heart skips a beat when I see there's something written on the glass of the door where the woman stood few moments ago. I drop my phone from my hand as I read the giant word written in what appears to be blood. Pictures. Pictures? Through the gaps of the letters I attempt to see the receptionist at the desk. But he isn't there anymore. Did I really see him then? Of course I did. Someone picked up the phone. Or was it her? No, not possible. I look at the word again and sit down on the ground to pick up my phone. Perhaps it means the pictures on my phone? I open the image folder on my phone and take a look. The folder shows one image. It's a picture of me with a woman in front of a house. In front of us is a small girl playing with her teddy bear. There's a lot of blur in the picture and I have a hard time identifying the woman next to me. I zoom in on the woman. It's a pretty woman, that's for sure. Blonde hair, pretty blue eyes and a broad smile. Something is coming back to me. With all the confusion and the issues with the door, I completely forgot why I tried to go outside in the first place. Could it be that I left my home because of her? Then why is my head completely empty? I look up from my phone and see that the word that was written on the glass is slowly fading. I know this woman. We were together. I'm pretty sure she was my wife. And yes, we had a daughter together. 4. It's been silent for a while now. The excitement from my partially returning memory has faded. Hello? Jamie? Do you remember? Do you remember what happened? That same voice. Again. I get up and look around to see if there's anyone around. Maybe it's the woman I saw earlier who's calling me. But all the parts of the revolving door are empty. I check out my phone to see if the voice maybe came from there, but no. I'm all alone here. Surely I'm not imagining things. Shut up. I shout out to the voice. Dead silence. I sit down again, facing the opposite room of the door. I close my eyes and try to convince myself of not being insane. Mommy doesn't want you anymore. I open my eyes and see a young girl in front of me. I sit up on my knees and look at the girl. Hey, I know you, I say to her with a smile. The girl doesn't smile back at me. Do you remember me, Daddy? She asks me. Of course I do, you're Celine, right? She smiles at me now, revealing her teeth. It's coming back to me. My daughter, 8 years old. She always liked to wear a white dress, just like she's doing now. She's holding her teddy bear with one hand. In the other she's holding a mobile phone. Daddy is a bit confused though. Do you know what happened? I ask her. She nods. Would you like to tell me? She shrugs. It's okay to tell me, sweetie. She stands there silently, thinking. I can't tell you, Daddy. I look at her, thinking of what to say to make her tell me. But I can show you if you want. What do you mean, you will show me? She laughs. You are funny, Daddy. I will show you, okay? I nod to her. She turns around and starts to play with her phone. I stand up and move closer to the glass to see what she's doing. No peeking. She commands me. My phone starts buzzing in my pocket. I take it out and pick up. I see Celine putting her phone to her ear as well. Hello? I say. 5. Again, nobody responds to what I say. I don't have my daughter on the line, I'm sure of that. I look at her while I hold the phone to my ear. She's looking back at me as well, but she put her phone on the ground. She still holds her teddy bear in her hand. Through the speaker I can hear some murmur, but there's not someone talking to me directly. Slowly but gradually the murmur is getting louder and I can make out a heated conversation going on. It's me, arguing. With my wife I guess. You know what? Maybe I will just leave. I'm fed up with this bullshit. It'll suit you. You always run away from everything anyway. Oh please. What do you want from me? You really want to know? Do tell me, yeah. I want you to get out of this house. And out of our lives. Your lives? If I'm leaving, I'll take our daughter with me. Oh, no you won't. A third voice joined. What's happening? Celine, go to your room. Mommy and Daddy are talking. The conversation suddenly ended, followed by a dead tone. The argument repeats itself in my head. I look at my daughter who was looking at me the entire time I was listening to the phone. Daddy. That's not all I wanted to show you. What do you mean? I asked her. I want to show you more too. Mommy said I can't show you because you don't deserve it. But I won't tell her if you won't. Please show me. What happened? I tell her. She doesn't respond to me, yet she doesn't take her eyes off me. I look straight into her eyes and see that they start tearing up. I try to say something as soon as a tear rolls out, but I can't find any words. I'm looking at the tear, which rolls down her cheek, down her neck and onto her dress. On her dress several red spots are appearing. Red spots which are slowly growing. It hurts, she says. The bloodstains slowly grow. I can see my daughter struggling to stay on her legs. My eyes start tearing up. I can't do anything about it. I try to smash the windows around me, try to bash through the corner of the revolving door, but it's no use. I want to hold her in my arms. You wanted me to show it to you, she says to me as she drops down on the ground. I drop down on my knees, in tears to see what's happening to my daughter. I close my eyes and put my head to the ground. My daughter. 6. I shouldn't have made her suffer like that. The argument, it had to do something with her death. But what really happened? I'm not sure anymore what is real and what isn't. I'm stuck inside this door, that's for sure. However, this door is unusually strong and withstands everything I throw at it. But then I just saw my daughter. But was that actually happening? Was I hallucinating? No. I couldn't be. So many things have happened in such a short time. Do you remember your daughter? There it is again. That voice. That voice of which the source is missing. My daughter died. I shout to the voice. I know it's insane to be talking to a voice that might not exist. But it's taunting me. Obviously it too has seen what has happened just now. What do you remember exactly? She's dead. And I'm stuck here. I can't do anything about it. I get back on my feet and start pacing around. This door I am trapped in. It must have something to do with my family. What am I missing? Surely the voice of the woman can explain something. Hello? Are you there? I ask. No response. I look outside to see if there's a sign of at least a shimmer of daylight. There's still only darkness to see. However, in the distance a small light appears. It looks like the headlights of a car driving towards the hotel. Can it be? Slowly but gradually the lights get closer. I can see the shape of a car turning and parking in front of the building. The beams of light are still pointing towards the door. A person gets out of the car. The silhouette appears to be moving towards the trunk of the car. I can't see what's happening on the back of the car, but after a little while the person starts walking towards the entrance, carrying something. I put my hands on the glass, trying to identify the individual. The silhouette gets clearer and I know that I'm looking at a woman now, judging by her hair. She's holding something in a blanket. A few meters from the door, she stops walking and I assume she's looking right at me. Jamie? The woman says. Frightened, I back away from the window. Who are you? Come closer so I can see who you are. Please. The woman does as I ask. She walks towards the glass and puts down the object she is carrying. It's me, Jamie. I also approach the glass to look at her. Sally, what are you doing here? Call the police, call an ambulance. Our daughter is dead. I say to her while pointing at Celine. She doesn't respond to me. Instead, she bends over and opens the blanket she was carrying. I watch her slowly unfold it. She picks up the object and holds it with both hands, showing it as if it's a holy relic. The knife shows Sally's reflection through the dried up blood. You remember this? I do. She says. I don't. But I heard our argument over the phone, I reply. She doesn't respond once again. Instead she looks to the other part of the revolving door where our daughter lies. Our angel. She didn't deserve this. And neither did I, she speaks without looking at me. She looks at me now. She drops the knife and takes her phone out of her pocket, dialing a number. My phone starts ringing now. I turn around, put my ear to the phone and listen. 7. What's going on? Celine, go to your room. Mommy and Daddy are talking. Why are you holding a knife? What? Put that away. Daddy, stop it. Shut up, child, get out of the way and go to your room. Jamie, drop the knife now. Jamie. Please. Don't do this. Daddy. But this is what you wanted, isn't it? Me separated from you and Celine? Well, if I can't have her, then you can't either. No. I can hear objects being thrown around the room, people shouting. Until the dead tone appears again. I take the phone off my ear and turn towards my wife, who dropped her phone on the ground. I'm not looking at the same woman anymore. She turned into the woman I saw on the other side of the door, the woman I saw first. I didn't recognize her before, but now I do. She raises her arm and points to behind me. I turn around and look at the words that appeared in blood on the glass. You did this. What did I do? I turn back to look at her and I see her clothes are slowly turning bloody as well. I can only stand there and watch what's happening. I killed my wife. I killed my child in a fit of insanity. I drop down on the ground with my hands covering my head. It all makes sense now. I did this. I'm a killer. I spent what felt like an eternity in that room on the ground, disgusted by my own being. I get on my feet and look at the opening of the revolving door, which is right in front of me. I'm not trapped anymore. I can walk straight towards the elevator towards my room. I feel the urge to go to my room. I don't even want to leave the hotel anymore. While I'm walking towards the elevator, I hear a familiar voice. Let's get you back to your room, shall we? 8. The officer, clouded by a troubled mind, enters the building after a 3-hour drive. He checks in his gun and badge at the entrance. Please take a seat over there, the receptionist says. The officer, wearing a casual stylish blouse and jeans with white sneakers, does as he's requested. After a 15-minute wait, he is approached by a woman wearing a long white coat. Officer Martin? She asks. Yes, that's me. You must be Dr. Colton, he replies. Please, call me Alice. If you'd follow me. I understand you were closely involved with this case, Alice says as they're walking through the long corridor. The officer replies, yes. Well, kind of. To be honest, I'm here on family reasons. You see, the victims who were murdered were my sister and my niece. I understand. Normally we don't allow insights into our patients, but in this case I can make an exception. Just keep it on the down low, please. My lips are sealed. The two arrive at an office, at the end of the hallway. They enter. The officer looks around to see what's in the room. The room looks very messy. There's paper scattered all over the places, several cabinets are opened and there's dust on the shelves where diplomas, photos and other objects are kept. I'm sorry for the mess. I was looking for the documents you required and I made a bit of a mess, I'm afraid. That's okay, I know how bad paperwork can get, the officer replies with a smile. Now then. The patient. So I'll explain the way we work around here. What we do is we keep audio logs of every day we treat a patient. We start off by picking up the patient, then taking him to a room where we try talking to him. Now this patient is a very peculiar case. We know what happened, all the evidence was there. However, this man isn't healthy on a whole different level, the doctor explains. I'm afraid you lost me there, he says. I think that when I let you listen to our audio logs, it'll be much clearer for you. The doctor takes a USB flash drive from his desk and plugs it into the computer on his desk. I took the liberty of compiling the most useful excerpts from the whole therapy session for you on this drive, Alice says before she plays the audio files. 9. Audio log Day 1. Patient, Jamie Garth. Day 1. Patient's name is Jamie Garth. Garth was admitted to the hospital 3 days ago. Declared insane. He was accused and found guilty of slaying his wife and daughter. He was found in a hotel room, rambling and mumbling to himself. Tomorrow I'll try to talk to the patient in his room to find out more about him. I had the opportunity to see the patient while he was being escorted to his chamber. He doesn't seem to respond to anyone or anything except himself. Audio log Day 2. Patient, Jamie Garth. Dr. Colton, Day number 2. This is Dr. Colton, accompanied with my assistant, Dr. Landon. Today we'll have our first contact with the patient. Continuing log at the patient's room. Dr. Colton, I'm in the patient's room now. Dr. Landon will follow shortly. The patient has been standing in front of his mirror for a while now. He doesn't see or hear us. I'll keep observing him. Dr. Colton, patient has moved to his bed. He shows signs of depression. Trying another attempt at making contact. Dr. Colton, Jamie? Are you listening to me? Can you hear me? Dr. Landon, making any progress? Dr. Colton, not really, no. I'm trying to talk to him, but it's like he looks right through me. He doesn't even notice me being here. Dr. Landon, what do you think is wrong with him? Dr. Colton, no idea. He's just not responding to anything. Dr. Landon, why not? Dr. Colton, I haven't figured that out yet. All I know is that mentally he's not even there. Jamie, quiet down. Dr. Colton, it does seem he is aware of people somehow. But it's not this world he's actively living in. We'll continue tomorrow when we'll take him to the therapy room. Audio log day 3. Patient, Jamie Garth. Dr. Colton, going to pick up the patient. Entering the room now. On my own today. Jamie, hello? Dr. Colton, the patient is aware of his surroundings. I want to see if he's able to walk around the hospital. Just to see if he does recognize physical areas beyond his own mindset. Dr. Colton, patient is getting dressed and walks outside into the hallway. He's walking down the hall, looking at other patients' doors. He doesn't show any interest to disturb them. Dr. Colton, don't go there. Dr. Colton, patient stops and looks around. I think he heard me that time. Selective hearing maybe? Jamie, hello? Who's there? Dr. Colton, the patient is looking straight through me again. I'm going to escort him to the therapy chamber. The patient doesn't seem to instantly be able to find his way to the elevator. Dr. Colton, don't worry, you'll learn your way around this place soon enough. You'll be here for a while anyway. Dr. Colton, the patient appears to be afraid of my voice. He's looking around panicky. Jamie, just going out for a nightly walk. Dr. Colton, no you're not, Jamie. Just come with me. Audio log day 4. Patient, Jamie Garth. Dr. Colton, we've kept the patient in the therapy room for a while. The patient seems to be trapped in his own world. He's asking people for help and tries to talk to people to help get him out. At this point, it appears he has no memory of what happened to him. Attempting another interaction. Dr. Colton, hello? Jamie? Do you remember? Do you remember what happened? Jamie, shut up. Dr. Colton, interesting. Audio log day 5. Patient, Jamie Garth. Dr. Colton, something just happened. Garth is talking to someone, his daughter probably. This means that he is trying to remember what happened. He's visualizing the past to help him figure things out. Interesting. I wonder how accurate his visualizations are. Jamie, what do you mean, you will show me? Jamie, please show me. What happened? Dr. Colton, the patient has been silent for a while now, he seems to have become desperate. Judging from what he said, I assume he found out that something happened to his daughter. Audio log day 6. Patient, Jamie Garth. Dr. Colton, a new day. We're going to see if the patient has retrieved some of his memory. Dr. Landon, you will do the talking then, I assume. Dr. Colton, hello Jamie, you spoke to your daughter yesterday, didn't you? Do you remember your daughter? Do you remember your wife? Jamie, my daughter died. Dr. Landon, so he is remembering some things. Dr. Colton, what do you remember exactly? Jamie, she's dead. And I'm stuck here. I can't do anything about it. Dr. Colton, you hear that? His memory is getting clearer. But not entirely yet. Part of his confused state the police found him in. Jamie, hello? Are you there? Dr. Landon, let's take this step by step. Best continue tomorrow, don't you think? Audio log day 7. Patient, Jamie Garth. Dr. Colton, we're witnessing something interesting today. Garth appears to be interacting with his wife. He's pacing around the room, looking frightened, confused. Jamie, call the police, call an ambulance. Our daughter is dead. Dr. Colton, the patient still hasn't figured out the facts regarding his daughter. Wait. Something is happening. He lies on the ground now. All interaction seems to have faded away. He's mumbling that he doesn't deserve to live. Perhaps his memory did return after all. Best take him to his own room. Dr. Colton, come on, Jamie, on your feet. Let's get you back to your room, shall we? Audio log day 10. Patient, Jamie Garth. Dr. Colton, no signs of improvement. The patient keeps repeating his own actions over and over. He doesn't seem to have any indication of time and place. Audio log day 19. Patient, Jamie Garth. Dr. Colton, I've now spent 18 days trying to get through to him. But it's no use. The patient relives the same experience over and over again. He still thinks he's trapped somewhere. He doesn't realize he's stuck in his own head. We call this the revolving door effect. The patient gets into an imaginary revolving door. He wants to go straight out, but his own mind doesn't let him. As soon as he thinks the experience is over and he can reach the outside, the mental door puts him right back in. His lack of memory, combined with an overwhelming feeling of guilt, doesn't allow him to leave that circle of despair and move on. Each part of that revolving door shows him things that happened. From what I and Dr. Landon could gather, is that he clearly remembers his daughter and wife, finding out along the way that he murdered them. This cycle has repeated itself 3 times now. It's unclear to us if he will ever break the cycle and manage to leave the revolving door. We'll try to talk to him a few more times, but if there aren't any signs of change, I'm afraid we'll have to put the sessions to an end and search for different approaches to solve the problem. 10. The recording stops. A few minutes have passed and the doctor and the officer have been listening to it quietly. The revolving door effect, huh? The officer says. That's what we like to call it, yes. So what will happen to Garth when the therapy sessions are over? The doctor puts her hands behind her head. In cases like this we either let the patient live in his room, live out his life. Or we try to find different methods. Perhaps after a while he will snap out of his delusional state himself. But we highly doubt that will happen. I see. I still wonder what could possibly drive a man this far into madness. Don't we all? The doctor replies, but that's what we're trying to figure out with our therapy sessions. Anyway, I hope I help you out. Perhaps you'll be able to have some closure now. I really appreciate your help. Thank you for that, the officer says as he gets up to shake the doctor's hand. Don't mention it, she says. If you'll excuse me now, I have a session with another patient in a little while. I'm sure you can find your way out. The officer nods with a smile and leaves the office. He walks back towards the entrance desk to pick up his stuff and proceeds to the exit. Before leaving, he stops and takes a look at the revolving door that's in front of him. Slowly he exits the building, deciding that he'd rather use the regular door next to it. Credit to Tvank or 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 next to it. Nobody likes you. Nobody ever has and nobody ever will. Not true. Yes it is. Why would you think otherwise? What's there to like about you? What do you know about me? Can't you just leave me alone? People just pretend to like you, but everyone hates you. I'm sitting in the back of the bus, there are no passengers but me and her. Her words are poison. I see her every day. And every day she tries to break me down with her words. You don't know me, I tell her. Oh but I do. I know everything about you. Even the small things. For instance I know that you take off your shoes every time after you enter your house. Oh yes. I look at the old woman. I feel very disturbed by what she just said to me. Is she following me? She doesn't take her eyes off me. Keep following me around and I'll call the police. She doesn't respond and keeps staring at me. A grin appears on her face. Just leave me alone, I say as I get out of my seat to get off the bus. It's not my stop yet, but I don't want to stay on the bus with this woman. Her presence feels very familiar, but creeps me out regardless. I walk towards the door as the bus starts to slow down. This isn't your stop yet. Where are you going? It's not like you have any friends or family to go to. Nobody wants to see you. I don't reply to her. I just want to get off the bus as soon as possible. The bus stops and the doors open. I don't greet the driver and get out. I start walking and the bus drives on. The streets and pavements are empty. As the bus passes me, I look at the window and see the old woman still staring at me. I can see her lips moving and I can make out some of her words. "I'll be watching you," is what she says. I don't understand why the woman is doing this to me. I don't know her, but for some reason she knows me. I get lost in my thoughts as I walk home. It's supposed to be a 20-minute walk, but in a blink of the eye I arrive. I snap out of my thoughts and realize that I'm in front of my house. I look around a few times to see if the woman is somewhere, hiding in the bushes or behind a car. But there's nobody around. The streets still are completely empty. I take off my shoes, open the door and go in, closing the door behind me. I lean against the door and close my eyes. I shouldn't let her words get to me. But her everyday demeanor is messing with my mind. As I stand there, I don't notice that someone has been ringing the doorbell for minutes now. 2. That's not a doorbell. The door of my room blazes open and a wall of light blasts through the opening, almost blinding me. There's a person standing in the doorway. "Good morning, dear, time to wake up. I'll be waiting for you downstairs." "Yeah, thanks. I'll get up." "Breakfast is ready," my wife says as she walks off. "Close the goddamn door then." I turn off the alarm clock and get up. I feel bad. Every morning I feel bad. These dreams are getting to me, they're breaking my spirit. They started about 2 months ago and I haven't been able to live normally since. At first they didn't bother me, dreams happen. But every night the same kind of dreams. Every night, seeing the same old woman, hearing insults over and over. It gets to me. Then on top of that, I've been feeling that I'm not appreciated by anyone. Not even by my own wife. I haven't had energy for a long time. I go downstairs after having showered and getting dressed to find my wife sitting at the breakfast table. She looks at me as I sit down and start eating. "How you feeling today, Jeff?" Joanna asks as she looks up from the newspaper. "I'm fine," I respond to her. "Yeah? Did you sleep okay? You look pretty tired." I said I'm fine, really. She keeps looking at me. It bothers me. "What? Why are you looking at me like that?" She takes off her reading glasses and puts them down on the table. "All right, dear, it's just that I've heard you talk in your sleep for a while now. I worry about you. I mean, I don't want to be annoying or anything, but I find the things you say in your sleep a bit disturbing." I look at her and ask, "What am I saying then?" "Well, I wrote down a few things," she says as she takes a piece of paper out of her pocket and unfolds it. "You might want to read them for yourself." "I don't want to read them for myself. Just tell me what I'm supposedly saying in my sleep." She puts on her reading glasses again and starts reading with a frown. "Okay. You are saying that you are totally fucking useless. You tell yourself that everybody hates you, that you're better off not existing. You hate yourself. Then you also say that nobody will ever love you. Everybody is useless except..." I cut her off during that last sentence and grab the note from her hand. I crumple it up and put it in my pocket. "You are making this up. Why would you say these things to me?" "I'm not making this up, sweetie. I love you and I worry about you." "Yeah, right," I say as I get up from the table. "Stuff like this really shows how much you love me." I'm off to work. I grab my coat and leave the house. It's pouring outside. I walk towards the bus stop with my head down, my hands in my pocket, able to feel the crumpled note in my pocket. Did I really say all that? I stand underneath the small shelter at the bus stop, looking at the drops of rain that fall on the pavement. My head aches. Normally I wouldn't take the bus, but my brother borrowed our car to go on vacation. He left a few weeks ago. It hasn't been that bad to go to work using public transportation though, it's just that I don't feel comfortable being in the same bus that appears in my dreams. I live in constant fear, irrational as it may be, that this old woman will appear in the seat behind me or next to me. As the bus arrives, I look through the windows to see if she's there. But to my great relief, she's not. I get in and prepare myself for a mentally exhausting day. 3. Cubicles. A lot of people fear ending up in one. The hopes and dreams that they had as a kid lost and soon forgotten, for they will spend an eternity working in that cubicle. I for one don't mind working in one. It gives me the rest that I need. It makes it possible for me not having to interact with colleagues. As I sit in my workspace, I stare at my screen. My mind drifts off to my dreams and the way I've been feeling the past weeks. I woke up one morning with an ache in my neck and a headache stronger than I had ever felt before. I had a nightmare that night. I can't remember much from the dream, except that I was in a room and I couldn't move. I wasn't alone, there were people around me. But of course I can't remember the details of the dream. It's normal to forget what a dream is about. Every night the same type of dreams, however, 5 or 6 every night, will help to remember what they were about. And that for 8 weeks. More than 250 dreams where my self-esteem is broken into pieces have made me question my own qualities and the value of my existence. And after each restless night I have to start the same routine where my colleagues don't appreciate my work, people on the street ignore my existence, and then I come home to a wife who says to love me still, while deep down inside I know that she's just pretending. For hours I had been sitting at my desk, overthinking things. I went out during lunchtime to take a walk, hoping that the fresh air would do me some good. But who the hell was I kidding? It was raining. The same anxiety from this morning takes over while waiting for the bus to take me home. But once again, the woman isn't there. I haven't spoken to many people at work and I feel tired as usual. As I return home and enter the house, I greet my wife, who is sitting at the dinner table. "Your brother called. He said he'll bring back the car tonight after 9, she says. "Okay, thanks. By the way, I'm not very hungry. I just want to get some rest. Are you alright though? You know I didn't want to bother you this morning with that note. I just want to take care of you." "I'm alright," I lie to her. I go straight upstairs to our bedroom. I close the curtains quickly, making them shift back and forth for a little while. I lay down on the bed situated in front of the window. With a restless mind troubling me, it takes hours to fall asleep. 4. I told you that everyone hated you. Did you see the way everybody was looking at you at work? How nobody wanted to talk to you? How everyone tried to avoid you? It's not true. Do you believe that? You really are stupid. By the way, who were you looking for yesterday at your front door? What? I wasn't looking for anyone. Oh, but you were though. I saw you. I was there. I'm in the city park, although I don't remember how I ended up here. The old woman is here as well. I'm not entirely sure where she came from. She just appeared. I look at her while she's talking to me. The woman has very few facial expression. I always assumed that she was old, judging by her gray hair. However, she doesn't have that many wrinkles. I think it's her creaky voice that creates the impression of an old woman. Her eyes are empty, there's no life in them at all. When she talks, only her mouth moves. It seems like the rest of her face is glued stuck. "Is there a reason why you are stalking me?" I hesitantly ask her. "I have my reasons. I just have to do it," she replies. I get off the bench I had been sitting on and walk away. I look over my shoulder to see if she is following me, but she isn't. She just stands there with her head tilted. "Going somewhere?" I hear her ask from behind me as I walk in the other direction. I stop and turn around to look at her, but nothing. She's gone. I turn back to keep walking. My heart skips a beat when I turn and I look straight into the woman's dark, cold, wide-opened eyes. She grabs me firmly by both arms and starts talking. "I'll find you again, you know. You'll never get rid of me. I'll break you in a million useless pieces and I'll make sure that you'll never be whole again." She lets go of my arms and throws me hard on the ground. I knock my head on the solid rock pathway and I slowly lose consciousness. 5. I wake up on the floor of my room. Unclear as to how I managed to roll this far out of bed. I sit up. Another nightmare. I look at the alarm clock on my nightstand and see that it's not even past 11 p.m. As I glance past the clock on the nightstand, I notice that my wife isn't in bed yet. Sigh. I stand up and go to the bathroom to get some water. Even though it's still early night, I don't want to go to sleep again. As I splash some water in my face and look at my pale face in the mirror, I can hear some voices downstairs. My wife is still up and talking to someone. I listen to the voices, but I can only pick up some of the things they're saying. I'm worried about him still. I think he's even hallucinating sometimes. It's not your fault. But it is though. He's my husband. I know he is. And he's my brother. I also remember how he was before and he changed. You think I should do something? You can't control the man's dreams. But he changed so much. And I never expected him to turn out like this. We just have to accept him for who he is now. Unless you want to involve some doctors in this. Shouldn't I intervene myself? It's getting worse every day. And I told you about all those things I wrote down. All I wanted in life was a husband who would love me more than anything. I'm not sure what I just heard. The way my wife and brother are talking about me. Over the weeks I've been getting more and more convinced that the old woman from my dreams might be right. I smack myself in the face. Stop it. It's crazy to think that way, because damn. A dream is just a fucking dream. But everyone around me is either disappointed in me, or thinks I'm worthless. Everywhere, at work, at home. Even on the streets people look away as I pass. Confused, I walk back to my room, closing the door behind me. There's a small glimmer of light shining through the curtains which I hadn't closed properly before. I know where the light is coming from. Our room is situated above the tool shed that I built years ago. I installed a backyard light system as well which turns on as soon as it gets dark outside. I suppose I should get some rest anyway. I walk towards my bed and the curtains and grab them. Just before shutting them, I notice a bit of movement in the light outside. I take a closer look to see what's moving in the distance. Is it the garden gate that's open? No, it can't be. It's always locked. It takes me a short while to realize that I'm not staring in the distance. I notice that I'm looking right at a pale face, just centimeters away from me. I stumble backwards and lose my balance as I recognize the face of the woman standing in front of the window. Did you hear the way they were talking about you? I told you that everybody hated you. Do you believe me now? Do you finally get it? Her voice sounds muffled through the window, but the fear she normally gives me only got worse. You can't be here. I'm not asleep, I'm awake. I'm awake. I say as I slap myself in the face, trying to convince myself of my own words. Yes, indeed you are, she says to me, and so am I. I get off the ground and sprint towards my door. I pull the door handle, but the door doesn't open. I bash on the door, shouting to my wife and brother. They can't hear you, she says with a voice suddenly as clear as crystal. I turn around and notice that the woman is now in my room. Her black clothing makes her posture very hard to see as the only light that's shining into the room is the glimmer from the backyard lighting. Her face, however, is clearly visible, almost illuminating. I see her gliding towards me, barely moving any limbs to get herself forward. She moves very slowly and keeps speaking to me with only her mouth moving. They will not help you. You don't live up to anyone's expectations. You're a burden to them and to everyone around you. You'd be better off killing yourself. Or I could do it for you. No. Get away from me. I shout to her as she is almost face to face with me. Suddenly she jolts forward and grabs me by the neck, choke holding me. I try to release myself from her grip, but she's unnaturally strong. I can't breathe anymore. Why? I whimper out with my last breath. I'm doing the world a favor. You're totally fucking useless. Remember? 6. Jeff. Get him up from the ground. Put him on the bed. Their voices echo through my head as I slowly regain my vision. "Joanna? Clarence?" I whisper. "Yes dear, it's us. What happened to you? You were shouting so we ran upstairs and we found you laying on the floor." I look at the faces of my wife and brother. "Jeff? What happened?" My wife asks again. "It was her. She tried to choke me. The woman from my dreams," I tell her. Joanna looks at my brother. He nods to her. "We're going to get you some help, get you to a doctor," she says. "I don't need a doctor. I'm not crazy. I need a gun, a weapon or something, so I can get rid of the creep. It's her who did this to me. We need the police or, someone. Jeff, we know what's best for you. We're going to get you fixed up, okay? Get you safe again." "But she'll find me." "No she won't, I will make sure of that, I promise," my wife says. "Now, get up and get dressed so we can go to the doctor. The doctor can help." I hesitantly get up, get dressed and follow them downstairs. "You'll be driving, Clarence?" "Yeah, I will." The three of us get in the car and drive off. I sit in the back of the car, my arms folded. I'm looking around nervously, trying to ignore the burning feeling of discomfort that's rushing through my head. She's going to get me before we arrive at the doctor. I know it. "Jeff, it's going to be a long drive, so take some rest. That'll keep your mind off things," my wife says, trying to get me back in my comfort zone. "I don't feel like taking some rest," I reply to her while I unfold my arms. I stick my hands in my pocket and feel something. Oh right. That stupid note. I take it out of my pocket, unfold it and read through it. I didn't even think about it reading it for myself before. 7. Dream talk. I'm fucking useless. I'm totally fucking useless. Why am I even alive? I don't care about them. Everybody hates me. Nobody will ever love me. Everybody is useless except my wife. I deserve it all. It's better this way. People only pretend to like me, but they hate me. I don't blame them. I'm better off dead. Reading the note gives me some very disturbed feelings. The things I read in the artsy handwriting of my wife match up with the things the old creep tells me. I keep staring at the words. Something isn't right. "What you got there, dear?" my wife asks me. "It's the note you wrote. With the things I supposedly said in my sleep. Will you stop looking at that? It's not helping," my brother says as he looks over his shoulder at me. "Keep your eyes on the road please," I tell him. It's just weird. This list of things. I'm starting to believe that I actually said them while I was asleep. Because I paused to look up from the note to my wife who turned herself in her seat towards me. The woman in my dream tells me these things as well. And I was believing what she said. But something on the note doesn't match with the rest. My wife keeps looking at the note, then turns her gaze towards me. "Like what? You never noticed that this whole list consists of me hating everything and everyone, including, well, especially myself, yet I happen to speak positively about you?" My wife looks at my brother. He keeps his eyes stuck on the road. "You just love me that much. I know you do, and I'm so happy that you do," she replies. "Maybe. I just think it's weird. We're here. This is the address, right?" my brother says as the car stops. My wife nods. He gets out and opens the door for me. I get out, leaving the note on the back seat of the car. He slams the car door shut and lays his hand on my shoulder. Joanna wraps her arm around mine. We walk towards the freestanding building we parked in front of. The house in front of us is old, but in a good state. It's not in the city, that's for sure, but I don't recognize the immediate surrounding area. "What's this building?" I ask. "It's where we'll fix everything," my wife replies. We walk up the stairs and she knocks on the big door of the dark building. This can't be a hospital. I want to ask again what kind of building it actually is, but as soon as I want to open my mouth to talk, the light turns on inside. A silhouette, visible through the glass window of the door, moves towards the entrance. Say, Joanna, this doesn't really look like a hospital or a doctor's office. Are you sure we're at the right address? My brother asks as he looks at my wife. She doesn't respond to him and I can feel my wife's grip around my arm tightening. I look at her. My brother is still looking at her as well, slightly confused by her sudden change in behavior. I try to move my arm a little bit so she would loosen her grip, but she doesn't even look in my direction as I do so. She keeps looking at the silhouette that's slowly getting closer, and as the door opens I can make out a familiar face. One that I don't like to see. One that makes me panic. That's her. We have to leave. Now. She's the one that's been doing all of this to me. I shout. My brother looks away from me, and turns his eyes towards the strange figure that appeared in the open doorway. I feel paralyzed and can't move. My brother lets go of my shoulder, switching his gaze between the woman and Joanna. Hello, doctor, my wife says. The woman speaks with her creaky voice while looking at me, tilting her head. Good evening. Oh. I remember you. How are you feeling? I don't dare to say anything to the woman who's been hogging me. I turn to my wife and brother. Please, get me away from her. Joanna, what's going on? My brother asks. A few seconds of silence pass. Without replying to him, Joanna reaches inside her jacket pocket and pulls out a gun. She puts the side of the gun in front of my face and shoots Clarence through the head without a second of hesitation. My eyes grow large as the noise of the gun rumbles through my ears, followed by a loud high-pitched tone caused by the loud bang. My brother falls over sideways onto the hard stone tiles covering the steps of the stairs. Jesus! I yell out. I pull my arm out of her grip and back away from her towards my brother. I kneel next to Clarence and look at him. My hand shakes as I move it over my brother's body. Shush honey, everything will be okay soon. Don't worry about a thing, my wife says as I sit there in the cold. I take Clarence's hand and feel his pulse. As I look up to Joanna, she continues talking to the old woman, her eyes still focused on me and my brother she just shot. Things didn't go the way I wanted them to. Can you help me out? You know there's no refunds on my services, right? The old woman replies calmly and appears to be unmoved by what just passed on her doorstep. I know, I'll pay you. Just help me out. All right then. I'm not going to take care of that body though. Understood. Just give me 1 second, she says while turning around to shuffle back inside. I slowly get on my feet and want to run away, run to the car to drive away and find a way to call the police, but as soon as I stand up straight, Joanna points her gun at me. Please don't run, she says coldly, with a slight tremble in her voice. Found it. The woman shouts from inside the building. She shuffles back to the door and holds up her arm. It's easier to get him inside this way. I look at the object she's holding and as soon as I see the needle in her hand, she jumps forward and smashes the thing in my neck. I drop down on the stairs, next to my brother. Darkness takes me. 8. My head. I want to hold my head and try to pressure away the headache, but I can't move my arms. What is this? I slowly open my eyes and try to make out objects in the room. I look to my left and I manage to identify some cutting tools. To the right of me is a chair. I know this room. Don't hate me for this, please. Who said that? The high-pitched beep is still rushing through my ears as I try to recognize the voice. I lift my head to look around the room. My vision is getting clearer by the second. At the end of the table I'm strapped onto I see a familiar face. Joanna? What's going on? I never wished for this to happen. I just wanted you to love me more, she says while her eyes start tearing up. She still has the gun in her hand and she's shuffling around on the spot uncomfortably. What did you do to me? She walks to the side of the table. She grabs my hand and talks. I wanted you to love me more. You never loved me enough. You had so much love to give to everything and everyone in life. But not to me. I look in her eyes, which are tearing up. Why did you make me do this? Why did you hate me? She suddenly yells at me with a touch of hysteria in her voice. She throws the gun on the floor and clenches her hands around the edge of the table. What did you do to me? And what did I do? She looks away from me and smirks. What did you do? Do you hear yourself? She drops down on her knees next to the table and holds my hand while cracking her neck. I never got the feeling that you truly appreciated me. I did everything for you. But why would you hate me then? I never hated you. I tell her. Yes, you did. You did so often. Of course you will never admit it. She shouted. I look at her, and she just stares right back at me. I don't know what's going on anymore. I don't even recognize her like this. A silence rushes through the room for minutes. I don't dare to breathe too loudly or say anything. Joanna tries to hold back more tears while she keeps looking at my hand, which she still hasn't let go of. Suddenly the sound of a door opening tears up the silence, and both of us turn our heads towards the door. We all know who's entering the room. The same shady old character that's been creeping me out for a long time. She stands still in the doorway. Shall we? She says. Yes. Yes, help me out, my wife says to her. The old woman moves around the room slowly while she starts talking. My body goes completely numb from seeing the figure this close to me, especially now that I can't defend myself or run. An interesting one, this guy. I got years of experience with this kind of stuff. I even reconstructed my own body and face. But thousands of operations on my resume, and I've never ever seen a case like this before. I mean, did I mess up? I might have. She rushes towards me after speaking and bends over me, taking my head in her hands, examining it. Yes. I think I might have messed up this time. But accidents happen. Mistakes happen. I'm human after all. Well, 40% human, 60% plastic and chemicals, she says with a grin while turning her head to look at my wife. What did you do to me? I asked her. My wife gets up and walks back to the end of the table. The old woman turns back to look at me, breathing heavily. She still doesn't let go of my head. You see that woman over there? She is the most messed up human I've seen in a long time. She tells me that you don't love her enough. I tell her that she could be right. Or wrong. Whatever she wants to hear, that's exactly what I will tell her. She comes to me and asks me if I could mess things up in your brain. She asks me to screw up the way you feel about things. Basically, she wanted me to make you love her more. Is this true? I look at my wife. She stands at the end of the table, and nods. She then raises her hand and slowly gives a thumbs up, combined with an awkward smile. The old woman forces my gaze back on her. It didn't turn out too well for you, I guess. Instead of making you love her more, I apparently accidentally ended up destroying your ability to recognize acceptance and love from others. You didn't even know how to express your own feelings that remained anymore. All that was left was a destroyed self-esteem and even self-hatred. Oops. I keep listening to the woman, unable to reply to her. Her hands are still wrapped around my head, the only part of my body that's not strapped down. She continues talking. She was supposed to get a husband that had nothing but love to give to her. However, at what cost? I find the courage to ask her another thing. Why were you haunting my dreams? You terrorized me for weeks, you wore me down until I had nothing left to live for. You followed me everywhere. You even tried to choke me to death tonight. She falls silent for a short while. I can hear Joanna sobbing softly in the background. That's interesting. That wasn't my intention at all. I just receive the money and do my work. You didn't tell me that I was involved in his dreams and hallucinations, she says while letting go of my head and turning towards my wife. I didn't know it was you, Joanna says. She turns to face me again. I suppose you don't remember waking up during my little experiment? I don't. But I dreamed about this room before. I couldn't remember where I had seen it. But now I do remember. I also remember the first time I saw your face, I reply to her. Yes. Interesting. It seems your destroyed self-esteem and inability to recognize acceptance took the form of the one person you saw, the moment they were being triggered. Which was you. Interesting, she says again. Everything that has happened in the past weeks is rushing through my head. I lay silent, simply staring at the ceiling, trying to collect my thoughts and organize them. But it's no good. My mind is completely numb. Time for me to fix things, the old woman says. Can you make sure he doesn't remember anything from what happened? That won't be easy, but I'll see what I can do. Everything will be okay, sweetie, my wife assures me. I don't respond to her. I don't expect you to forgive me. I only expect you to love me even more when this is all over. My wife is insane. Still, I can't blame her. I'm not even mad at her. I should be, but I'm not. After all, I do love her a lot. I close my eyes and realize that they did in fact achieve the goal of their previous experiment on me. I feel another sting in my neck and I let the darkness take me again. 9. Jeff. Wake up. I open my eyes and notice that my face is stuck to the car window. My wife is looking at me from her seat while I rub the sleep out of my eyes. I sit up straight and greet her. Hey sweetheart. Hi darling, my wife replies. I didn't want to wake you, but we just got home. You slept so long. Did I? What time is it? I ask her as I look around, trying to remember why we're in the car. Joanna looks at her wristwatch and tells me it's 10 a.m. in the morning. She smiles at me and I smile back at her. That was quite the night out for you. You got so drunk that I almost had to carry you back to the car. Good thing I was the designated driver, she says, laughing. Oh damn, that's embarrassing. I can't remember anything from last night. You're the best, though. I don't think there's any wife better than you. Oh sweetie, you were just saying that. Come on, let's go inside. I step out of the car. There's a cold wind rushing around outside which gives me the chills. I close the car door, but before I slam it shut I see something on the rear seat. It's a small piece of crumpled paper. I take it and unfold it. I read through it and I can't help but nervously laugh at the little note. Hey Joanna. Check this out. I found a weird note. She stands beside me and reads the text that's written on it as well. Isn't this your handwriting, dear? She takes the piece of paper out of my hand and looks at it. Indeed it is. It doesn't matter though, just forget you even found it. You'll do that for me, won't you? Sure. Anything for you. Let me get our coats though, are they in the trunk? I reply and I walk towards the trunk of the car. No. No. Leave our coats in the car. Don't open the trunk, I will take care of it, Joanna urges me. She grabs my arm and playfully pulls me towards the house. She opens the door and I take off my shoes. For the life of me, I can't remember the last time I slept this well, I say to her before I close the door behind us. Credit to Tvank or 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 behind us.